Honestly, I'm worried. But should I be? As an amateur boxing historian who frequently harks back to the glory days of boxing, spanning from Ali's rope-a-dope strategy to Mike Tyson's peekaboo style, the whole ordeal honestly scares me. To me, when watching footage of long gone fights, the look is different, the feel is different, the red gloves, the grainy picture, the distorted audio, the perspiration, as two warriors ultimately put their life on the line. One is momentarily transported back to that fleeting period, and there's something quite beautiful about it. Fast forward to modern day, without meaning to sound like a bitter old man, look at society. Lack of resilience, instant gratification, failure to regulate egos, and exploitation. And sadly, in my view, much of modern day boxing reflects such degradation. Lacking sportsmanship, quitting on the stool, excessive trash talking, empty stadiums, and flamboyance with no end product. The majority of the time, it just doesn't feel the same. Sadly for me, Mike Tyson against Jake Paul appears like a microcosm of tradition against modernity. Although not always a glowing, perfect role model of a human, far from it at times, Tyson represents the old world, built upon grit and determination. A truly rags to riches case in which Tyson, born on the mean streets of 1960s Brooklyn, would find his feet under the tutelage of legendary trainer Cus D'Amato before becoming the youngest heavyweight champion in history. He was widely revered for his early morning runs, intense weight and boxing regimen, and ruthless mentality which was so key in dismantling opponents placed before him. I actually did a full video on Mike Tyson and stoicism if you're interested, link is down below. Yet he wasn't just a dumb, inarticulate brute who sought little besides destruction. He was, and still is, incredibly complex. Not only were his speeches mesmerizing.
Lynx is a conqueror. No, I'm Alexander. He's no Alexander. I'm the best ever. There's never been anybody as ruthless. I'm Sonny Liston. I'm Jack Dempsey. There's no one like me. I'm from their club.
But he's simultaneously a boxing historian.
Reviled for being black.
For his time, he was a defensive genius. Because everybody back then, those times, would just make the fist and just take the punch big time. But nowadays it would be so much difficult to do that because people throw 7-8 punches at a time.
And in his old age has delved into philosophy.
You know what I mean? It wants to show you something. It wants to see how much you can take, how much you can handle of life. You say you love life, you want to live life. I'm going to show you life. Life is beautiful, but you have to accept the good and the bad as being beautiful. You can't accept the good, oh, this is beautiful. Then we lose somebody, oh, life sucks. Life is beautiful because life gave us the ability to just know them on our journey in life. We met them.
These are all traits that I value in a fighter. On the other hand, there's Jake Paul, a product of the influencer boxing trend born out of a KSI call-out.
Wants it, you can come get it. Jake Paul, Logan Paul.
Although his accumulation of wealth and fame has been meteoric and impressive, his platform provided him with a large boxing audience in absence of the correlating skill level. He has largely built a record which, let's face it, is built upon amateurs, basketball players, and wrestlers who simply wanted a payday. While Mike Tyson defeated Holyfield, Jake Paul fought Anisong Gibb. Many see Jake Paul's antics as harming the sweet science, engaging in ridiculous trash talk, and undermining the notion of meritocracy. Skill no longer equates to viewership. Ultimately, society now rewards whoever can make you look at the screen the longest, as opposed to who is the best boxer. Additionally, after accusing Eddie Hearn of bribing judges and fixing fights, Jake Paul is now being sued for defamation, further ruffling the feathers and showing a disregard for the established boxing order. He's also just quite irritating the vast majority of the time. But now we've cemented why each fighter either embodies tradition or modernity, let's examine the pros and cons for each side. I'm sure we're all aware of how destructive Tyson was in his prime. If you aren't, go and watch his highlights right now. Explosive, destructive, fast, technically sound, defensively solid, he simply had it all. He was also plainly terrifying, but we are talking about Tyson almost 35 years later. And with boxing being one of the most physically demanding and cardio-intensive sports out there, individuals can get exposed horrifically. With the bouts being 8 2-minute rounds, although not as long as championship bouts, it will still require vast endurance. When George Foreman fought Michael Moorer for the WBA and IBF heavyweight titles back in November 1994, he was 45 years and 360 days old. Although Foreman won the fight, I'm still not entirely sure how, as he looked completely gassed throughout basically the whole bout. To put it into perspective, Mike Tyson is currently 13 years older. An obvious indication of how Tyson may perform is of course his bout against Roy Jones Jr. in November 2020. Although the fight was clowned by many,
Junior, ready as ever. Hello.
I felt Mike Tyson's performance was pretty good, being consistently on the front foot while displaying solid footwork and speed. I think it's clear that Mike restrained himself at times as he prepared to explode onto the body and head of Jones, but pulled away at the last second. Now let's remember, he was up against the 51-year-old Roy Jones Jr., who was evidently carrying excessive weight, hindering him significantly in the later rounds. Yet by all accounts, Tyson's power is still very much present.
Gosh, and I gotta say that Mike Tyson looked to be not only the more in shape fighter, the guy that skills translated at 50 years old, because again,
This dude, first of all, he's still too strong. He still got all his old tricks, and he's much harder to hit than I ever thought he would have been. You understand what I mean? That's what was surprising to me.
And his constant work up until the final bell suggests his gas tank is still somewhat deep. But can he keep this up against someone who was born over a decade after he won his first heavyweight title? Born in January 1997, Jake Paul is 27, meaning he is arguably close to his athletic peak, and is 31 years younger than Iron Mike. When he first started boxing around early 2018 in preparation for an amateur fight against Deji Olatunji in August, many expected a straightforward victory. Jake had done wrestling in high school and just generally had a bigger, more athletic build than Deji, and yet he struggled in his first bout, defeating the Brit in the 5th by TKO, yet sustaining more damage than many believed he would. But credit where it's due, Jake Paul's improvement since has been substantial. He has demonstrated knockout power in bouts with Nate Robinson, Ben Askren, Tyron Woodley, and to be honest, I was semi-impressed with his performance against Tommy Fury, where he did somewhat hold his own against a kind of proper boxer, although the fight was a snooze fest overall. In more recent bouts, like against Nate Diaz, Jake has certainly gassed out in later rounds, perhaps suggesting vulnerabilities here, especially in light of him bulking up to 220 pounds for the Tyson match, considerably more than the 185 pounds against Diaz, though the fight is 2 rounds fewer and Nate is known to have a ridiculous gas tank. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that Jake will undoubtedly have the advantage in terms of endurance, but perhaps not to the level originally believed when the fight was initially scheduled. What may harm Tyson's chances in the bout may come down to either poor discipline or ill health problems. Regarding the former, his fight against Kevin McBride in June 2005, his last official bout, saw Mike attempt to break the Irishman's arm, be deducted 2 points for headbutting, and eventually he quit on his stool. Although he appears to have mellowed out in recent years, he still undoubtedly has it in him to go completely ballistic, especially when confronted by a wind-up merchant like Jake Paul. Mind you, many people wouldn't mind watching him get his ear bitten into. Recently, Mike has declared that the ulcer flare-up which delayed the fight a few months ago is entirely over. Earlier in the year, the condition had caused him to become nauseous and dizzy, and it was later revealed that he was suffering from sciatica, a disease which causes numbness in the lower part of the body. Even though these hindrances are currently subdued, they could easily prove to be a problem for Mike in the matchup, with Hall of Fame boxing referee Richard Steele aptly noting that the bout will require extra vigilance. However, there's one major thing that I might be overlooking in Mike's corner, pun intended: fight experience. Though Paul is by no means a novice, having now had 11 pro bouts, he is up against a man with 56 pro and 18 amateur bouts under his belt. This is a man who is tutored by perhaps the greatest boxing trainer ever in Cus D'Amato.
See? You got a chance of putting 3 perfect punches if he's upstanding. That's it. See? Ain't no way he's going to hit you then, right? And remember, it's always good to throw the punch where you could hit him and he can't hit you. That's what the science of boxing is all about.
Cus instilled many stoic principles within Mike and very much set him on the path to glory, while meticulously reiterating the essential elements of ring craft. Admittedly, Jake has a team of renowned former boxers and specialists behind him, including Sugar Shane Mosley, BJ Flores, and Jalen Love, but he's still an infant in terms of boxing IQ and ring craft when compared to Mike. This may be useful in managing the fight and knowing when to be the aggressor or back off slightly. So let's get into the potential outcomes, some of which are fairly depressing. There are 14-ounce gloves being used for this bout as opposed to 10, meaning the chances of a clean knockout are less likely, but not impossible. Mike evidently still has power, and his best chance of victory might be to swarm and blitz Paul in the opening exchanges, landing to the body and hoping that Paul lowers his guard for a possible headshot. However, if this doesn't pay off, he could be in deep trouble in the later rounds. As I touched upon at the beginning of the video, watching Tyson succumb to one of Jake's punches would be incredibly depressing. Although Tyson's legacy will remain, there's something sad about witnessing the baddest man potentially ever falling to some influencer boxer regardless of age. The glory days of 90s heavyweight boxing will suddenly feel like they've been infiltrated by an unwanted modern foe in my view. It's sort of hard to explain. A cynical part of me thinks the whole ordeal could just be a chance for each fighter to cash in, so possibly expect body shots and constant clinches for 8 rounds, similar to Mayweather against Logan Paul. But if it isn't, then I hope to witness fireworks as both fully battle it out. Tyson's recent training footage suggests he's taking it seriously, dropping a sparring partner and exploding impressively onto the heavy bag. Jake Paul's training regimen seems hard, but the sparring partners don't seem to be nearly as aggressive as Tyson likely will be, and this could fail to prepare him for what might come. We'll have to wait and see. Honestly, my head says Mike is perhaps too old to cope with a younger man like Jake's punches, yet my heart predicts that Mike will simply go into autopilot in the ring and completely overwhelm Paul in the early exchanges, hopefully. The fire appears to still be there for Mike, he just needs to put it into practice. But what do you guys think? Please leave your fight predictions down below, I'm actually intrigued to read them. Who really knows how this farce will play out? Thank you so much for watching, guys. Please consider liking and subscribing if you enjoyed. Much more content will be coming out soon. Catch you in the next one. Cheers.